and welcome back to Vlogmas on the SeeSaw. So one of the things I wanted to do was to share with you a little tradition that we started when Caleb was about 2 or 3, which was a Christmas reading advent. So every year in December we got a selection of 24 different winter and Christmas stories that did change a bit over the years as he got older, and we would read one together every evening in the lead up to Christmas. Now this is the first year we haven't done it, although I have got the Christmas books out, and he's I noticed he was looking through some of them this evening. So I wanted to start by sharing with you some of our favourites from when he was younger, so I would think kind of under 6 age group, really, although some of these are still favourites now. We did then buy some older storybooks as he got bigger, with different kind of messages and themes in them. And I will fish some of those out and do another video later during Vlogmas with some of those ideas. But if you've got little ones and you want to start a tradition of reading more Christmassy stories at this time of year, it was a really lovely tradition while we did it, that every evening there was a new book, a new story to read. And then the Christmas books got packed away with the Christmas decorations. And so when they came out the next year, they were fresh again and new, and you know, in a little one, he'd forgotten a lot of the stories, although some of them that we've had all along, he now remembers really well. So I just wanted to share a few of them with you to give you perhaps some ideas if you're thinking of doing the same, or if you just want some ideas for little ones for some new Christmas books this year. I think most of these are probably available either at your local bookstore or definitely online at somewhere like Amazon. So first of all, we've got Where's Santa? You can't go wrong with a kind of Where's Wally, Where's Waldo kind of book. So this is Santa's on his holidays, in between Christmas, after Christmas, and he's got somebody chasing him down, trying to steal his naughty and nice lists. And you've got a little selection of people there that you're looking for on every page. So there's several little characters. And then the pages are, as you would expect, all kinds of detail, lots of characters, and you have to find Santa and his friends in amongst them. So this one is one they can dip in and out of all through the lead up to Christmas. Caleb really enjoyed. He took this out with him when we went out for dinner and things a few times in the lead ups to Christmas, because it kept him entertained looking for them. And every year when we bring it out, he doesn't remember where they were from the year before. So a really nice one that you can keep bringing out, and is something that just keeps children occupied for a little while looking for Santa. Then I've got a story that when I got this, the John Lewis ad the year before had been this story. So it's Bear Stays Up for Christmas. And essentially it's a bear who's hibernating as always, and his friends decide that he really needs to experience Christmas one year. So there was a lovely John Lewis ad which had that same story around it. And this is lovely illustrations. So there's the bear sleeping, ready to hibernate away for Christmas. And his friends decide that that's not going to happen. And they do everything they can to try to keep him awake in the lead up to Christmas. We've got a little bit of glare there from the light, so apologies for that. But the lead up to Christmas, they're trying to keep him awake so that he can experience Christmas Eve. And then the present they get for him is a big quilt, so that when he settles back down to sleep, he can snuggle up nicely in his quilt. Then I've got 2 Judith Kerr Mog books. So Mog books have been around for a very long time. A couple of years ago, this was in Sainsbury's in the lead up to Christmas. I can't remember what it was specifically for. It was for something. I think it was a charity book, and I picked that up, and that's Mog's Christmas Calamity. And in that one, Mog gets some tinsel wrapped around her tail and catches a light on the fire, and there's a fire at the house, and all of the Christmas gets damaged, the Christmas tree and the presents, and they're either burned or covered in water from the fire extinguishers that the fire brigade bring. And then the kind of neighbourhood rallies around. So if you've got a child that's perhaps having a difficult Christmas, or has struggled, or there's been something that's not quite gone right, this is a really lovely story to show you that even in difficult times, which we've all had this year, you can still enjoy Christmas, and it's still about people more than it is things at Christmas. So that is a lovely story. And then the original Mog's Christmas is the one where Mog, there's too many people in the house, a tree comes into the house, Mog's had enough. If you've got a cat, you will understand that, and heads up onto the roof and won't come down until she falls down the chimney. I don't know if Mog is a she or a he. She is a she. I've always called her a she, but I've just looked on the back and she definitely is a she. But if you've got a cat that can be a bit troublesome and tries to climb in the tree and doesn't like all the fuss going on at Christmas, this is a lovely story. And if you've got children that just like cats and like animal stories, this is a great one. Then there's a lovely story called When It Snows. Now this has got very few words in it. It's a picture book, definitely. And it's got some really beautiful big pictures about snow and about the adventures you can have. And it starts off, you know, riding on a polar bear and going to the North Pole and seeing what's that say, fairies and elves and a giant reindeer. And the last page of the book probably sums it up perfectly. He says, the little boy says that he can go to those places whenever he wants. And the words say, because my favourite book takes me there. And I just love that sentiment of getting lost in a book, and a book can take you on all kinds of adventures. So this is by Richard Collingridge, and it's just called When It Snows. And it's just a really lovely message that books can take you on journeys to places you perhaps would never visit. Then another one, this was one of the first ones we had for Caleb, One Winter's Day. It's by M. Christina Butler. These are made out of felt. So all through the story, the little hedgehog's hat and scarf and mittens are made out of felt. And this is a really lovely story because the little hedgehog sets out, his nest has blown away, and he sets out to visit a friend to see if he can stay with the friend. And on the way, he meets other animals that are cold and that are suffering, and he gives them his hat, his scarf and his gloves. And it's all about, you know, if you give out positive things and you're nice to people, that pays you back in bigger ways. So it's again a lovely message, not particularly about Christmas, but a very wintry message, definitely. Then I've got two stories that are again a similar theme. Now no list of children's books would be complete without a Julia Donaldson. So her Christmassy one is The Stick Man. Stick Man's been separated from his family and trying to get back to them in time for Christmas. It is a lovely story, and it uses the most basic of things, a stick, and turns it into a human type character with a little family. And it is a lovely, lovely story about all the adventures that the stick has trying to get back to his family. And on a similar theme, but a very different story, is something called Drummer Boy, and this is by Lauren Long. And Lauren Long is an author illustrator. And this is a lovely story about a little drummer boy toy that gets falls into the trash. So it's a bit like in Toy Story movie, you know, something falls into the trash, gets taken away, and he's lost far from home, and he just wants to get back to his family. And it's really well illustrated. There's beautiful illustrations in this story. And again, it's about that journey that people go on trying to get back to the people they love for Christmas. One Snowy Night is another fun one that's not particularly Christmas, but it's definitely wintry themed. It's by Nick Butterworth. So most of these stories are by quite well-established children's author. Percy the park keeper always feeds the animals in the park where he lives. But one cold winter's night, Percy discovers that his little friends need more than food, and he must find a way to help them. So it's a snowy night, and they keep coming to the park keeper's cottage looking for help, and he ends up with a house full of little woodland friends. So again, if you've got little ones that like kind of woodland animals and those sorts of stories, this is a lovely one about how they all bundle in, friend and foe. And this one actually has a really big poster in the back, which kind of paints the picture of the story with everybody bundled in together. So it's again a nice one where you can look at the poster and pick out things to talk about. But that one was another one that was quite early on in our Christmas book collection. Then anybody with little boys, and it is little boys I'm afraid in particular, that's very stereotypical, but that's the way it is. If you've got boys, you will absolutely know. The Dinosaur That Who Pooped a Planet series has The Dinosaur That Pooped Christmas. So these are by Tom Fletcher and Dougie Pointer. Really fun books for little boys. The dinosaur eats up all of Christmas, and what goes in must come out, essentially. And then we've got Father Christmas Needs a Wee. Now these two, Caleb loved these two when he first had them. He was probably about 5 or 6. And Father Christmas Needs a Wee is essentially the story that every house that Father Christmas stops at, he has a drink with his cookies. And by the time he's done visiting all the houses, he really needs a wee on his way home. So that's just a funny story about having to keep drinking and then needing a wee. But both of those really appeal to little child humour. And in fact would probably still make Caleb giggle a little bit now at 11. Then we've got a bit of a classic, The Polar Express. Now, we love the movie of this, but I do think the movie is probably for children a little bit older. I think it perhaps can be a bit dark for children, smaller children, and some will love it, but I think there are some, Caleb certainly wouldn't have watched that movie when he was smaller. But this is a picture book version of the story, so there's not as many words in it, but it does cover the main points of the story. And it's beautifully illustrated again. And if you want to introduce your child to the Polar Express, perhaps if you're going on a train ride, maybe not this year because of everything going on, although I do know some of them are still running. But if you wanted to introduce that story, this picture book version is a great way of doing that. Then we've got Dear Father Christmas. This is a lovely little book. If you've got little ones again that like books where things happen and where they lift up flaps and look inside, these has letters to Father Christmas from children, and it's all about the letters that children write to Father Christmas and the letters that they get back from Father Christmas. So this one is by Alan Durant, and it is a really lovely kind of lift the flap sort of book, but with a different style because each little flap is a letter. Then a few years ago there was a book called Santa's Coming to Our Town, and then various locations made it into a localised version. So this is about Santa is coming to Cambridgeshire, which is where we live, and in the book it references, you know, Ely Cathedral and Huntingdon and St Ives and Soham. So there's lots of place names in there that that Caleb recognised from quite young, places that he went to play football and rugby. And places that he knew, like Ely Cathedral. So this is a lovely book. I'm sure this is available for most counties and regions of the country. So if you look out for this, you should be able to find it in your local bookstores with your county in it. Then again, this is just such a classic, one of my favourite authors of all time of children's books, and Christmas would not be Christmas without a bit of Grinch. So How the Grinch Stole Christmas, Dr. Seuss obviously. Just such a classic book. It's that lovely Dr. Seuss rhyming words that you're used to with all the Dr. Seuss books, and such a great message that if you take away all the presents, the food, the tinsel, the trimmings, Christmas is about something much bigger. It's about what's in your heart, and it's just such a lovely message to start to teach children quite young. Because you never know when there's going to be a year when the commercial side of Christmas magic doesn't happen in your family, and knowing that Christmas can still be Christmas even if you don't have all of that stuff, I think is such an important message, and this book tells it better, or delivers that message better than any other, because everybody recognises the Grinch and everybody has a feeling about the Grinch. Some people think he's kind of cool and some people think he's a really nasty person, but ultimately as the story plays out we can all recognise a little bit of ourselves in the Grinch, I think. Then just because from the very beginning we've always had the Nativity Story in our Christmas readings, I just think it's important, if you're going to celebrate Christmas, that you understand what Christmas is about, whether you believe in the religion or not. I think it is important to understand where the Christmas story comes from and what it is actually all about. And so this is a beautifully illustrated book. So when I was a little girl, I had a number of books that were illustrated by Jan Pienkowski, I think. And Jan's illustrations are silhouettes. So everything is done in that silhouette style. And I have always loved this drawing. So when I saw that there was a Jan Pienkowski version of the Nativity Story, I knew that I needed that for our collection. And this is just a beautiful book. It's a hardback, and this is a treasured book for me. This will not leave our house. It will definitely be a part of my Christmas collection for years to come. And then finally, Christmas Eve is always about this story. So this is the original Clement Clarence Moore Clement Clark Moore. Clement Clark, I don't know where I got Clarence from. Clement Clark Moore, The Night Before Christmas poem. Now, this is a poem that introduced the names of the reindeers to popular folklore. And again, this is a beautifully illustrated younger children's version of this. The pictures kind of tell the story, although the words are all there, but it's a very traditional fat and jolly Santa that you would expect. But then I also purchased a few years ago this version, which is a hardback. And if you look at the illustrations there, this is much more of a kind of Scandinavian style. I think that style is very Scandinavian, both in the way that Santa is depicted, and if I can just find a picture with the reindeer on, the reindeer as well. You can see that's very Scandi, I think. And this is... This also has a CD in the back, and it's got some original songs and narration by Peter, Paul and Mary, who those of you as old as me will know them as a folk type of singing group. And they narrate this, and there's some songs on the CD as well. But I just loved this illustration being something a bit different. It's a different view of Santa from the fat and jolly Santa we see on, unlike the previous book. But this one is just still the same story. It's lovely. The pictures are big and bright and colourful. And I think every Christmas Eve needs a telling of this story. Now, as I said, there are some other books that we've had from the beginning that are still on the pile now, that we bring out every year. And I will cover some of those. There are some classics in there. So if you're thinking I've missed something that's a classic, it's probably in our older mix. As well as the slightly older age group books that we have. So thank you for joining us. I hope that's given you some ideas, perhaps if you're looking for some new stories for your little ones for the lead up to Christmas. And we look forward to seeing you back here during Vlogmas on the SeeSaw soon.